Hi, sorry I'm late. I am back. It is Monday, March 20th, and I'm back for a helmet Q&A and to answer some really great questions about helmets. I'm really excited to bring this information to you. I've got some really great questions that I'm excited to answer. We're going to talk about really small sizing for helmets, especially when it comes to women who ride, because the majority of women, and not all, I'm just talking about the majority, maybe 2/3 or so of us, have smaller head shapes, extra small and small. And I'm going to give out some of my best favorite recommendations for smaller helmets, as well as double extra small sizes for helmets, because the only people who do need sizing that small are typically kids. If you have a young one that you've started to teach to ride with you or ride occasionally, your little one might need a really small helmet. But also, pretty much the majority of women are the ones who need double extra small or extra small. I've probably, in my 10 years of selling motorcycle gear and fitting people, I probably only met like 2 or 3 men who need an extra small in their helmet size. It's just not very common. So I'm going to throw out some suggestions for double extra small helmets. We're also going to talk about answer the famous question, are there women's motorcycle helmets? And more importantly, what does that mean? Is there such a thing as a women's motorcycle helmet? If so, what does that imply? What exactly is a woman's helmet, so to speak? So we're going to talk about that. I also have a couple of questions people have sent me, and so we're going to touch on quiet helmets versus, I guess, noisy, quote unquote, helmets that offer a really great field of vision, and some anti-fogging solutions if you have a helmet that doesn't offer that, or what are the options for anti-fogging in your helmet, because we know how annoying that can be when you're riding and your helmet's fogging up on you. So I'm going to share some of my favorite ideas for that, and then I've got a few helmets with me so I can show you some of my favorite features and brands. All right. So let's get started with women's motorcycle helmets. So when you're online, when you're shopping, you're going to find the category of motorcycle helmets online. There'll be women's will be one of the options if you're shopping, or just even in store. A store might even advertise, check out our women's helmets. So what does that mean? I mean, for the most part, women's helmets are marketed the same way other technical, high-end products, I think, are marketed to us as women. And that includes, technology, laptops, for example. I've seen pink laptops. I've seen other kind of lighter colored and multicolored gadgets and that sort of thing to appeal to women. The products themselves are identical, right? Like Beats headphones, I think, is a good example. You can find Beats headphones in these softer gold and pink and pearl colors, aside from the, standard black, matte black, and darker colors. And even though they're not outwardly saying this is a woman's headphone, I think from what I remember from their advertising, I think you can kind of draw from that a pearl pink headphone, obviously they're hoping women will buy them. So the same, I'd say, goes true for helmets as well, for motorcycle helmets. In my experience, there's really only been one brand that has thought about the female rider specifically and created a helmet to address the female market. And beyond the aspect of color. So not just trying to put something out lighter and pinkish and feminine, but actually thinking about us and our facial structures, our jaw bones, that sort of thing, and a helmet fit that they could provide to work for the majority of women riding out there. So one brand you've probably heard of is Schuberth, and I have one right here. It's an older model called the C3W. This is a modular or a flip up. So it goes from open to close, and you generally don't want to ride with it this way. It's really just for convenience when you're at a stop or at a gas station. So what Schuberth did was, I believe they obtained data, or they partnered with a cosmetics company to get information about women's facial features, our cheekbones, our heads, and just kind of our facial fit, really, and how they could provide a helmet model that would fit the majority of women and fit a lot of us who need smaller sizing. So aside from the color interior that you see, it's this kind of tannish color, and I think that was to try to address the issue of makeup, because if you wear makeup while you ride, you probably rub some of that off onto your helmet liner. So they tried to address that. Of course, we know not every woman on the planet has skin this color, so calling it nude was, I think, kind of a weird choice, but I see what they were trying to do. The biggest difference is the contour of the cheek pads, and then the contour around the forehead. The padding is pretty heavy, especially right around the cheekbones and the cheeks. Apparently a lot of women have very narrow cheekbones, so right around here and then right around the forehead. So they really brought the padding in to be nice and snug right about here. And then the padding inside is really contoured for higher cheekbones, very, I guess a little bit more model-esque. I have very full, very full Korean cheek pads or cheekbones. So for me, a heavy cheek pad does not work. I actually need a thinner one because I already have my own cheeks. So the padding on the Schuberth is it's pretty harsh right here, and it kind of comes in a little bit tighter here, and it has a heavier padding around the crown. Aside from that padding difference and the color options that were offered, when the C3 Pro came out, or the C3 Pro, not just the C3, they offered a pearl pink, so a very creamy pink paint scheme, and that was to draw their female customers, and a lot of the dealers were asking for it, so they responded. So other than the color scheme, same venting features, same performance features, exact same features as the standard C3. And I'm sure a lot of women out there were fitting those instead because it probably fit them better. But Schuberth is the only one I've seen that's actually addressed that particular issue and brought it to market to create a better fitting helmet, not just a better looking one. So really the answer to that question, there's no such thing as a woman's motorcycle helmet. The best helmet for a woman is the one that fits her the best. And I'd say that's also the best answer for a woman's, quote, motorcycle. It's the motorcycle that fits her the best, but not necessarily a, quote, women's motorcycle. So it's actually, I'd say this is a good segue into the issue about quiet helmets, because that was another question posed to me as well, is what are the, quote, quiet helmets? And quiet is a very subjective term. It's different for everybody. It's going to vary on, I'd say, quite a few different things. It could be, it has everything to do with how tall you might be, your riding position, your motorcycle, whether it has a windscreen or not, whether you wear earplugs to kill wind noise, a lot of different factors, because the ergonomics can change so much, and it can certainly be affected by by you and how tall you are, how small you are. So there's a lot of different things that are coming into play to make sure that you have a quieter ride, but many of you have probably heard of Schuberth and how quiet they market their helmets to be. And having ridden in one for about, I'd say 6 months or so, 6 to 8 months, I would say that, yeah, they do a really, really great job of dampening the wind noise, of creating a quieter environment inside your helmet. Of course, that's, assuming that you have a semi-faired motorcycle and at least a modest windscreen. It's extremely difficult to create a quiet environment when you have no windscreen, no fairing, and you're just out in the wind, and everything's really loud, I think, at that point. But the first thing that you can always do to create a quieter environment inside your helmet is to wear earplugs. You need them no matter, I'd say pretty much no matter what you ride, with the exception of, extremely faired, large touring motorcycles. But even then, you're still going to hear wind noise. And the more that you can dampen that wind noise inside, the more comfortable you're going to be, especially when it comes to long distance riding, especially all day on your motorcycle, 500 miles a day, 700 miles a day, even just 100 miles a day, just all day in your helmet. And the minute you throw in some earplugs in your really inexpensive non-Schuberth helmet, you will have a really, really a little bit more enjoyable experience. After that, then yes, you're going to have to invest a little bit more money into brands that have spent a tremendous amount of time and effort to research and develop and create a helmet for you that drops the wind noise, that increases the aerodynamics, that makes the helmet more comfortable for you inside and out. And generally, I'd say you're going to find that Shoei and Schuberth tend to be toward the top of the favorability chart for noise reduction, but other premium brands like Bell, especially the new Bells, I think are pretty quiet, at least based on feedback that I've seen. My husband has a Bell Star. He actually has an older Bell Star, which is came out. It was the ones that came out 2 years ago, because last year Bell relaunched their Star line. So he has the one before that, and he tells me that it's actually pretty quiet, and if not, maybe even a little quieter than his Shoei was. Right, honey? Is that right? Yes. He had a Shoei Quest, and so going up to a Bell Star, he's got a little bit quieter experience. So I'd say that most of the premium brands do spend time and effort to create a quieter helmet, and they do things like design the face shield mechanisms to seal really, really, really well to keep out wind noise. If you look at something like a Shoei, they do like a double gasket almost all around, so that when your face shield closes, it gives you an incredibly quiet seal and there shouldn't be any whistling. Same with the venting on top. They try to create venting solutions that give you airflow without increasing wind noise. I've found that between the 9-10 helmets I've ever owned, this Shoei RF 1200 that I have is the quietest one I've ever ridden in. And I think they're able to accomplish that with their venting scheme. Traditional venting format, if you open your helmet up, if you look inside and take your liner out, you can see holes. So there's vertical holes drilled all over, right on the top from your forehead, at the base of your neck, and all these holes are there to give you some airflow. But with Shoei, what they do that's really unique is they actually have tunnels that flow through the helmet. So from the front of this vent all the way through to the back exhaust, there's actually a tunnel physically through the helmet. And if you look at some of their other models like the GT Air and the X14, you'll see kind of indentations
on the top of the helmet, and they're physical tunnels. So air is actually being pushed physically through the helmet. That not only increases the ventilation, but it also makes it quieter. So Shoeis have a really good reputation for that. I would say a lot of the kind of quiet experiences you're looking for are always on a relative level. So say you have a really simple helmet like the Scorpion. It's just entry level. This is the 410. Yes, this is the R710, excuse me. The R710, it's the California edition. So of course I had to get this. I won it. I loved it because it has the Hollywood sign. It's got the California state on it. It's got the bear. It says California on it. I don't wear it. It's a size small. It's too big for me. But so say I had this helmet for a little while. The minute that I, going from that to try to find something quieter, as soon as I would, bumping into, say, the next level of helmet, like maybe HJC's ARFA 10. That's actually a discontinued model. The new version is the ARFA 11. So maybe I go from a Scorpion to that ARFA. It'll probably be twice as quiet, than my experience on the Scorpion. So that's, that's kind of a relative scale. I'd say the same thing would go for, say you bought a really inexpensive rock bottom helmet for $70 online. Maybe you just didn't know what you were buying and you bought it. Well, going from that to this Scorpion R710, it's probably a quieter experience just right there. And then you put your earplugs in and now your helmet's way quieter than before. So there's always going to be that kind of relative scale for noise reduction. So it all depends on where you're coming from. And when you read reviews, you want to look at where the person's coming from. Because say that person had, a top of the line Arai, and they're trying to find something quieter than that. Well, Shoei and Schuberth is probably a probable next step for that, or Bell, and you'll get a quieter experience from there. But say you've got this basic R710 here from Scorpion. Well, going from that to an Arai, you probably have a little quieter experience just from that step. So you want to qualify and try to see where people are coming from, and you want to look at what are they riding. Are they on a race bike or a sport bike maybe that has no fairing, no windscreen, or a cruiser that's just fairingless as well? Yeah, their experience is going to be louder, especially if they're not wearing earplugs. So that can make a difference. So there's all these different factors you want to look at. But my first question is always, well, are you wearing earplugs? Because that right there will dramatically increase your noise reduction. You'll have a, drastically better experience just by popping in some really cheap earplugs. And then you put in nicer ones, and then it gets even quieter. So that's I think, easy solution for that. But I'd say in general, if I had to categorize quieter helmets, I'm going to throw out your top of the line brands, Schuberth, Shoei, the Bellstar, the Scorpion R2000, which is their top of the line street helmet, an ARFA 11 Pro, which is HJC's top of the line. And although that one is really more of a track-ish helmet, track helmets are always louder than your street helmet. So a Shoei X14 is going to be really loud because it's got huge vent tunnels for maximum speeds at, on the straightaways at the track. So that means the venting is crazy loud because they're not thinking about the helmet being quiet for you. They're trying to push as much air through the helmet as possible as you're in a tuck going 200 miles an hour or 150 miles an hour, or in my case, 80 miles an hour. I hate going over 100 miles an hour, even on the track. So stay away from any heavy track helmets because those are the louder helmets. So stick to stick to the street level helmets like the Shoei RF1200, the Shoei GT Air, the Bell Street Star versus the Race or the Pro Star. That also will help you find something quieter. I'd say in the modular family, Schuberth is usually
top for noise reduction as well as showy. You have to remember that with modulars, because there's this big side cutout right here that's going to bring in a lot of noise and generate more noise. So you want to look carefully at the modulars you're considering for noise reduction. Always look for openings too that are really snug. So if we look at kind of the space around the neck, like on this, it's actually, on this scorpion, it's pretty, I'd say pretty thick. Like the padding is pretty heavy. And I think they did that to try to keep some wind out, because a lot of wind comes in through your neck. On this bell, on husband's bell star, the opening here is, see, it's kind of average. It's not super skinny. It looks like it kind of opens up in the front a little bit. The new stars are really narrow going in. So that tells me they're actually they're quieter than this version. And then on the shoe berth, we look at the opening. It's very, very small. It's got these extra neck flaps too to bring the noise levels down as well. So earplugs are always your best friend. There's a million out there. I highly recommend going to earplugstore.com and ordering sample kits so that you can try out 10 different ones, because maybe you need really small earplugs because you have very small ears, or maybe you need softer ones because the firm ones you're using hurt too much. There's just a variety that you can choose from, and then that way you can actually try out a few and then buy like 200 for $20, and then you have a lifetime supply of earplugs. So there's my spiel on quieter helmets. I do want to address extra small and extra small helmets. Rita from my Facebook page asked about double extra small sizing for helmets. I'd say that is a really uncommon size. I would say at most maybe a dozen people. Oh, that's my dog. Sorry, Benny.